corruption is absolutely off the charts. I mean, it's very crazy.
It's paid for by utility ratepayers, the people living here, right? We're paying for this crap. I wonder if that's why my utility bills are skyrocketing. Holy crap, man.
Regular people's wealth is being drained to build infrastructure that will enslave them.
Do not vote for Vivek Ramaswamy. If you're in Ohio, do not vote for Vivek Ramaswamy. Him, if you're going to vote just because he has an R next to his name, you're an idiot. I'm sorry, you cannot vote for these people if they're going to be selling us down the river like this.
It pops up in a few different documents, as I note in the article, but there were basically what seemed like bribery attempts to get zoning laws changed so he could build this city or town in New Albany. And one of the documents this appears in also alleges that Wexner is linked to organized crime. It was produced originally by the Columbus Police Department. Because New Albany is basically now like a de facto suburb of Columbus. It's in that same regional area, which is the Ohio's capital, and Wexner is extremely influential there.
He is the richest man in Ohio, Les Wexner is. And New Albany is a real place. You can look it up right here. He got zoning laws changed. He put money into this area to build his own. I really don't ever go down to Columbus. I'm more in the northern part. This is interesting to me. I would like to go down there and look at this. I would like to go look at New Albany, but this is essentially the hub on which they're using to try and bring in all these tech giants, Anduril and whatnot. And he's using bribery. He's using his connections, whether it's JD Vance, and now soon we're going to have a gubernatorial election in Vivek Ramaswamy. Close friends with JD Vance. He's on the ticket. Guarantee if he gets in, this is going to be full throttle, pedal to the metal, new Silicon Valley.
And so essentially over time, New Albany became a public-private partnership where the New Albany company is in a public-private governing partnership with the local government, the city of New Albany. And later Wexner lobbied to get the law changed even more so it could be a de facto private government that's independent within Ohio, can tax citizens, issue bonds, controls it in a way that the local regional government cannot.
And this is essentially, I think, a minuscule model of how they want to do the government. Right, we've seen through the Dark Enlightenment, through GovCorp, this is the avenue they want to take. They want to fully privatize the government to have these kind of sovereign city-states that are run by the CEO kings, the technate of America.
Which is kind of crazy in and of itself. But beyond that, the New Albany company has become one of the main drivers in attracting data centers to Ohio. So the state is currently fourth in the country for most data centers. It has, I think, 193, but over 120 of those are like in New Albany, in the New Albany area, where that real estate is sold to those companies that are courted to that area, by the New Albany company that Wexner controls. So he's been making bank off of all of this. And the way that these companies are courted are through these other public-private partnerships, the model of which Wexner created initially in Columbus, but now it's spread to every region of the state, where taxpayer money is used to create these large incentive packages to court these companies over there, even though 75% of them would have relocated anyway. But it's an insane amount of taxpayer subsidies that's being funneled to these people through this network that Wexner created. And as I note in the article, I mean, we can get into some of the specifics, but the corruption is absolutely off the charts. I mean, it's very crazy. It's like Banana Republic kind of stuff going in Ohio, and you have these
it's the heart of it
venture
all.
capitalists and other people coming in and basically buying politicians and using it to privatize major aspects of Ohio regional and state governments. A lot of these people are directly linked to people like the current Vice President JD Vance, who was an Ohio senator, or the guy who's currently running for governor of Ohio, Vivek Ramaswamy. And those particular guys are part of this crowd of, if you want to call them accelerationists, or fans of the quote unquote dark enlightenment. They're interested in privatizing government entirely. and then having it be ruled by a CEO dictator, which is basically the model proffered by Curtis Yarvin, who is cozy with all of these people. So that effort to basically privatize government in Ohio, it was started by Wexner and Epstein. And as far as the Epstein connection, when Ghislaine Maxwell was interviewed by Todd Blanche, the Deputy Attorney General, she said that Epstein ran New Albany. And as I note in the article, Epstein is all over New Albany, and his billionaire investment company had a branch operating there, and it seems to be the same entity that was actually the Wexner investment company, or the New Albany property company, which the Wexner Foundation admitted was a Wexner-related role that Epstein was involved in, which in itself, just flies in the face of the whole narrative that's been put forth for how Wexner doesn't really have anything to do with anything bad Epstein ever did. But Wexner just runs Ohio. He had members
really
and probably, has a lot of influence over the national governance as well. He was redacted in the Epstein files at first as an alleged co-conspirator. He had members of Congress come to his house to depose him. I mean, none of that is normal.
But this article that she wrote here, very good article. There's a lot in here. If you're from the Ohio area, check it out. The boom in AI data centers across the U.S. has also spurred a renaissance in nuclear power as data centers continue to drive the county's surging power demands. Ohio is, of course, no exception. However, unique to Ohio is the fact that the state's largest corruption scandal ever is intimately linked to the state's nuclear power industry and those seeking to further expand the Silicon Heartland. I like how they put that the heart of it all, the heartland. This is the Silicon Heartland, no more the Silicon Valley. Great. In July 2020, 5 Ohioans were charged with racketeering in what has been described as, quote, likely the largest bribery and money laundering scheme ever perpetrated against the people of the state of Ohio, end quote. This scandal led to the arrest of then Ohio House Speaker Larry Householder, Ohio Republican Party Chairman Matt Borges, and Householder's advisor Jeffrey Longstreth, and 2 Ohio-based lobbyists Neil Clark and Juan Cespedes. The 5 men were found to be complicit in distributing bribes to members of the House in order to pass a controversial law that led to the bailout of 2 aging power plants and 2 coal power plants paid for by utility ratepayers. So us, the people living here, right? We're paying for this crap, i.e. regular Ohioans paying utility bills. I wonder if that's why my utility bills are skyrocketing. Holy crap, man. The 2 Ohioan nuclear power plants, Perry and Davis Bessie, received a $150 million per year subsidy due to the passing of this law known as House Bill 6. The 2 nuclear power plants central to this scheme were owned by Energy Harbor, which was previously known as First Energy, the very company found guilty of bribing Ohio officials in order to ensure their hefty bailout. Central to the bailout was a successful campaign by Larry Householder to take his position as the Speaker of the House. Householder had secretly controlled a 501c4 nonprofit called Generation Now, into which First Energy had funneled around $60 million between 2017 and 2020. According to U.S. Attorney David DeVillers, who charged the 5 men, there was, quote, no mistake, this is Larry Householder's 501c4. Reporting from NPR in July 2020 stated that DeVillers had alleged that, quote, the money from the scheme was spent to the detriment of other political candidates and the people of Ohio, end quote. The prosecutors claim that, quote, members of Householder's enterprise used those payments for their own personal benefit and to gain support for Householder's bid to become Speaker. The rape never stops. Don't you understand? The rape never stops. It's over when they say it's over. And you're going to keep paying for these bailouts. You're going to keep paying for these bribes. You're going to keep paying for the technocracy, for smart Columbus, for the smart city, for the 15-minute walkable city where you're going to own nothing and you're going to like it. That's what we're paying for. Isn't that lovely? Also, didn't 2 of those people involved end up dead? One of them with a gunshot wound to the head where they just deemed it a suicide. What the hell is going on? Ohio, come on. You can do better.
I think it should be clear at this point that the U.S. federal government is not really interested in investigating white-collar crime because it works on
No.
behalf and serves the white-collar criminals who pay for politicians and pay their campaigns and fly them on their private jets and give them special privileges. And then the
Yes.
politicians, when they're in office, give them a return on their investment. Let's put it that way. And the
Absolutely.
investments are bribes or, indirect bribes. And actually, as I note in the article, Ohio's largest corruption scandal and bribery scandal ever, the first energy or HB6 scandal, is tied up directly with this group and with Wexner.
I've been hearing about this for
just
years.
A few years ago. I think the story broke in 2020, and two of the main people have ended up dead. So one of them is a lobbyist that used to work for Wexner in the New Albany company and was tied to this company, First Energy. And First Energy basically bribed a bunch of people in the Ohio state government to push through legislation that bailed out a bunch of their nuclear and I think a coal-powered power plant with taxpayer money. And the amount of bribes they spent is dwarfed by how much money they got as part of the bailout. So that was a great return on investment, quote unquote, for them. But one of the people that was arrested as part of that scandal for racketeering and other things, Neil Clark, just was found in the woods near his house with a bullet to the head. It was quickly ruled a suicide. And
I thought I heard of that.
Work for Wexner in New Albany. And who do you think really wants these nuclear power plants functioning? AI data centers.
Yep.
Oh, because they need the power.
They need the power.
And
because the power demand's only going to go up, and they're courting more and more data centers to Ohio all the time. And taxpayers are funding all of this. And this is really a microcosm of what's going on a bigger scale. Basically, there's a wealth transfer going on. Regular people's wealth is being drained to build infrastructure that will enslave them. Basically.
So they've created these private.
How can anybody fault me for not wanting to work and pay? Why are we paying taxes? Why are we doing this? Why haven't we stopped paying taxes? Oh, I guess because somebody's going to show up at your front door with a gun and force you to pay taxes. Well, I guess now they don't even need to do that. They'll just take it straight out of your bank account. What would happen though if everybody in Ohio just stopped paying their taxes? What would happen? Would they would just take it and they would just take it from us? This was like the social contract, right? Was that you give over part of your labor, part of the money you make to the government, and the government powers the roads, powers the lights, whatever. And they do things for you, right? They give you security. But now they're saying that they're taking money from us and they're funding these things underhandedly that are essentially going to lead to our eventual enslavement. Did anybody agree to that? Did anybody agree to that social contract? It's incredible.
Public partnerships, which is always a mark of evil, if you ever hear that term, private public partnerships. And they're taking the money that people pay in taxes to build a techno state that will enslave them through mass surveillance and through the implementation of 15-minute cities. Is that what you mean by that?
Also, this stupid idea that people have that like there's a difference between the private and public. Like I hate this. Maybe on like a local level, you can say that's the case. But like once you get to a certain point where it seems like Les Wexner or Palantir, Anduril, all these companies, they're all in bed with each other. They're all in bed with the local and federal government. I don't think that there's much of a distinction. But this like libertarian thought of like, we don't want the guys with the guns controlling us. So we'll take corporate surveillance and corporate authoritarianism. I guess that's better. As long as it's deemed private, they can't do anything. Oh, okay. Or they just bribe your politicians and they buy off people and they get to do whatever they want. The raping will just continue. Okay.
Well, there's definitely this group is also tied to the efforts to bring, digital finance to Ohio and also to bring digital ID to Ohio and all of that infrastructure. Yeah, absolutely. So the Ohioans already have digital ID. It's called Ohio ID. It was created by Innovate Ohio, which was this board created by the same governor that made JobsOhio. The guy that basically bought out the governor to create JobsOhio was on the board, and also on the board was J.D. Vance, Vivek Ramaswamy, a lot of these same figures. The current head of it right now is the co-founder of JD Vance's venture capital firm, Narya Capital, which was financed by Peter Thiel and Eric Schmidt of Google and all of these,
lovely
would-be
people,
overlords. So they basically were tasked with, quote unquote, modernizing Ohio state government, and that includes giving everyone in Ohio a digital ID if they want to access government services or interact with the state. And Mike DeWine, the current governor, issued an executive order forcing all state agencies to onboard onto the Innovate Ohio platform, controlled by people that are intimately tied to the big tech crowd.
So this sounds
Wow.
exactly like what Steve Bannon was alerting us to when he came on our show. This is these guys getting together.
Well,
go ahead.
Sure. I think there's a lot of people that have been warning about it. I personally haven't listened to Steve Bannon's take on it. I'm a little unsettled by how close he was to Jeffrey Epstein.
Yes, another one of these guys who they come out and they say things and I go, oh, that was pretty interesting. That was pretty good. He sounded pretty good. He talks about like the techno-feudal future we're bumbling into, which I think that's good. That's very good. He's talking about that, trying to wake people up. But Steve Bannon as a person, shady figure, man. Shady figure, had connections with Epstein for sure. I don't like him. I don't like Steve Bannon. And also things we've heard about him in Trump's first term. I like some of the things he says, take the propositions, the truth value of the propositions themselves, what they're saying. Yes, that is a true thing that's happening, but I'm not buying into you, Steve Bannon. Got to divorce these things.
Someone that writes a lot about Jeffrey Epstein, I prefer not to go there, but a lot of people have been warning about this for a long time. The dark enlightenment crowd, was hugely behind Trump in his, his 2024 campaign and now his second term. A lot of big people that are openly embrace that idea were just appointed to the White House's new Science and Technology Advisory Board, announced today. People like Mark Andreessen, Mark Zuckerberg, Sergey Brin.
Wow, it's all of them. That's all.
Well, there's more. I can't remember the whole list.
Yeah,
right
but
now.
I mean, it's like all the main players. This is
a lot of the main ones.
Yes.
And the overlap between those main players and Epstein is pretty considerable. I mean, Peter Thiel and Epstein were planning to create a secret society together. They were business partners. Epstein apparently had control over this, what was a Thiel VC firm fund, Valor Ventures 3, which put all this money into Anduril, which is a Thiel-backed autonomous drone and weapon manufacturer, which luck would have it, just got a huge deal via JobsOhio to install themselves at the very airport that Wexner and Epstein brought Southern Air Transport to back in the 90s. Now it's going to be the Anduril airfield. Pretty cool.
Wow.
Pretty cool. And I looked this up. JobsOhio, if you go on their website, she's saying this is this sketchy reject. I reject all your cookies. This is this sketchy pro-business like investment group. If you go on here, it's got Anduril all over the place. First thing you see, dude. So they're going to bring this investment in order for them to build the techno slavery. Yes, please, master. May I have more? And Columbus seems to be the ground zero.
Unbelievable. Right?
I mean, it does, but I would encourage people to go and read this piece and talk to people in Ohio who are trying to fight against the data centers and exactly the kind of resistance they're receiving, despite how unpopular they are.
So
clearly, the government there is functioning without regard to what the public wants. They don't care.
Well, that just sounds like America.
Well, sure, but my point is that Ohio is where most states will end up going if nothing is done, because they are advancing this model there much more quickly. They are taking people's land much more quickly. Their water, making their electricity bills go through the roof.
Dude,
and they are pushing
yes.
through all of these subsidies, tax abatements, tax exemptions,
Dude, my electricity bill was like twice what it normally is last month. I'm a single dude living by himself. Like, I couldn't even believe it. Is this why my shit's going through the roof?
incentives packages while gutting everything good that the public sector does, from public schools to any sort of publicly funded healthcare program. It is all being gutted across the board. Ohio State says they don't have any money for those things, but they have plenty of money for data centers.
So I had Derek Rhodes on the show, and he's talked about this techno state, and he talked about how this isn't a new idea, that this was actually started by Elon Musk's grandfather, and that this since World War II, they've had this idea for a greater northern, just like the Greater Israel Project, they have the Greater American Project, and they want to make it all a techno state. They've had this idea.
A technate, yeah.
A technate. They've had this idea since after World War II. Are you familiar with that?
After the Great Depression.
Kind of like the fruition of that?
So I'm familiar, yeah. So the reference there, it's Elon Musk's grandfather who was in Canada, Joshua Hadelman, I believe his name was, and he was head of the Canadian branch of what was known as Technocracy, Inc., which was originally created in the U.S., not in Canada, but had some traction in the post World War II era. And the authority on them for a long time has been Patrick Wood, who's was talking about them, I think, before anyone else was.
Patrick Wood's very good.
But there's a lot of interesting things to be garnered from looking there and looking at the parallels today. But beyond that, I think this particular more current crowd of would-be technocrats who fancy themselves accelerationists or darkly enlightened people or whatever. They basically the interest at this point is using technology as an enforcement tool, really, to create a private corporation built on surveillance capitalism. And they say if you don't like the service offered to you by a SovCorp, you can move somewhere else. But what would the real difference be in moving from a Mark Zuckerberg smart city to a Jeff Bezos smart city to a Sergey Brin smart city? I really don't think that's the winning quote unquote free market move there. I think ultimately we're being marketed this. And even if they don't have, the public opinion on board, which with a lot of this, they don't, they're feeding us endless distractions and psyops and other things to keep us from paying attention to what's happening in people's backyards.
Do not vote for Vivek Ramaswamy. If you're in Ohio, do not vote for Vivek Ramaswamy. If you're going to vote just because he has an R next to his name, you're an idiot. I'm sorry. You cannot vote for these people if they're going to be selling us down the river like this. I agree with Mr. Fuentes on this. I don't agree with him in going to vote for Democrats because I think it's the two sides of the same coin, two wings of the same bird, but I don't think we should be voting for these people just because they're MAGA. They're MAGA. I think they're my guy. They're MAGA. They're not going to sell us out. They're trying to save America. Okay, if you say so.